London, a city shrouded in mist and history. Its cobblestone streets, once walked by royalty and revolutionaries, now echoed with a different kind of terror. A darkness had fallen upon the city, cast by the shadow of Derek Brown. Between 2010 and 2015, he stalked the night, a predator in human form. His motive, to not just kill but to become a legend. He craved infamy, to see his name whispered in the same breath as the most notorious killers. In 2016, the long arm of the law finally caught up with him, but the scars he left on London's soul would remain, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the city's glittering facade. His crimes, a macabre homage to the killers who came before him, sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened detectives. He became London's nightmare, a living embodiment of their deepest fears. Derek Brown, the copycat killer, had come home to roost. There is a dark fascination with the minds of serial killers. Their ability to commit heinous acts without remorse or empathy intrigues and terrifies us. We are drawn to understand what drives them, what makes them tick, and how they can so easily cross the boundaries of human decency. Their crimes, often brutal and seemingly senseless, captivate and horrify in equal measure. The sheer brutality of their actions leaves an indelible mark on society, creating a mix of fear and fascination. We are left to ponder the depths of human depravity and the fragility of our own safety. This morbid curiosity, fueled by sensationalized media coverage, creates a breeding ground for a terrifying phenomenon: the copycat killer. The media's portrayal of these killers often glamorizes their actions, turning them into dark celebrities. This, in turn, inspires others to follow in their footsteps, seeking the same notoriety and infamy. These individuals, often seeking notoriety and recognition, mimic the crimes of those they idolize. They study the details of their predecessors' actions, meticulously planning their own crimes to achieve the same level of infamy. The desire to be remembered, to leave a mark on history, drives them to commit unspeakable acts. They crave the same infamy, the same power over life and death. The thrill of controlling another person's fate, of playing God, becomes an intoxicating obsession. They believe that by emulating their idols, they can achieve a twisted form of immortality. Derek Brown was no different. A man with a dark past and a twisted mind, he found solace in the stories of infamous killers. He saw in their actions a way to escape his own insignificance, to become someone who would be remembered long after he was gone. He yearned to carve his name in the annals of criminal history, alongside his idol, Jack the Ripper. The Ripper's reign of terror in the late 19th century had left an indelible mark on history, and Brown wanted to follow in his footsteps. He studied the Ripper's methods, his victims, and his ability to elude capture. The Whitechapel murderer, as he was known, had terrorized London's East End in the late 19th century, his crimes remaining unsolved to this day. The mystery surrounding the Ripper's identity only added to his allure, making him a figure of dark fascination for those who sought to emulate him. Brown saw in Jack the Ripper a kindred spirit, a blueprint for his own dark desires. He believed that by following the Ripper's example, he could achieve the same level of infamy and fear. He meticulously planned his crimes, choosing his victims with care and leaving behind clues that mirrored those of his idol. His victims, often vulnerable women, mirrored those of his idol. He preyed on those who were alone and defenseless, believing that their deaths would bring him closer to his goal. The fear and panic that spread through the community only fueled his desire for recognition. His methods, though adapted for the modern age, bore a chilling resemblance to the Ripper's gruesome handiwork. He used the same tools, the same techniques, and left behind the same gruesome scenes. The police were baffled, unable to understand how someone could so accurately replicate the crimes of a killer from over a century ago. He wanted to be remembered, to be feared. The thought of being forgotten, of fading into obscurity, was unbearable to him. He believed that by becoming a copycat killer, he could achieve a twisted form of immortality, ensuring that his name would be spoken in the same breath as his idols. And in the darkest corners of his mind, he believed he had found the path to immortality. The legacy of fear and death he left behind would be his monument, a testament to his twisted genius. In his eyes, he had become more than just a man. He had become a legend. Whitechapel, a name that echoes through the annals of history, synonymous with fear and mystery. This district, with its narrow, winding streets and shadowy corners, has long been a place where the past and present collide in eerie harmony. The very name sent chills down the spines of Londoners. It conjured images of foggy nights, where the air was thick with dread, and the silence was broken only by the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the alleyways. It was here, in this historic East End district, that Jack the Ripper had claimed his victims over a century ago. The brutal murders, shrouded in mystery, left an indelible mark on the collective psyche of the city. The identity of the Ripper remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries, a dark enigma that continues to fascinate and horrify. Now, Derek Brown was resurrecting that terror, stalking the same streets, preying on the vulnerable. His presence was a grim reminder that the horrors of the past could resurface, bringing with them a wave of fear and uncertainty. His victims, like those of his idol, were often women on the fringes of society. They were individuals who had slipped through the cracks, living in the shadows of a bustling metropolis that often overlooked their existence. Sex workers, runaways, the forgotten souls of the city. These were the people who lived on the edge, their lives marked by hardship and struggle. They were easy targets for a predator like Brown, who exploited their vulnerability with ruthless efficiency. They were easy targets, their disappearances barely noticed by a society that had already turned a blind eye. In the dark, lonely alleys of Whitechapel, their cries for help went unheard, their pleas for mercy ignored. The families of Brown's victims were left devastated, their grief compounded by the knowledge that their loved ones' final moments were filled with unimaginable terror. The pain of their loss was a heavy burden, made even more unbearable by the brutal nature of the crimes. The discovery of one victim's DNA in Brown's flat sent shockwaves through the community. It was a breakthrough in the investigation, a piece of evidence that brought the horrific reality of his actions into sharp focus. It was a stark and chilling reminder of the brutality of his crimes. The forensic evidence painted a grim picture, one that was difficult to comprehend and even harder to accept. The police released a statement vowing to bring the perpetrator to justice. They assured the public that every resource was being utilized to track down Brown and put an end to his reign of terror. But for the people of Whitechapel, the fear was palpable. The streets that were once familiar now seemed menacing, every shadow a potential threat. The community was gripped by a sense of unease, a collective anxiety that permeated every aspect of daily life. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every corner a potential crime scene. The legacy of Jack the Ripper, once a dark chapter in London's history, was being rewritten in blood. The specter of the past loomed large, casting a long shadow over the present. The legacy of Jack the Ripper, once a dark chapter in London's history, was being rewritten in blood. The specter of the past loomed large, casting a long shadow over the present. The streets of Whitechapel, steeped in history and haunted by the ghosts of the past, were once again the stage for a macabre drama that captivated and horrified in equal measure. The hunt for Derek Brown was a race against time. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity, a moment lost in the pursuit of a dangerous man. The city of London was on edge, its streets filled with an air of palpable tension. With each passing day, the fear in London intensified. People whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously as they walked the streets. The once vibrant city was now cloaked in a shroud of dread, its residents prisoners of their own fear. The police were under immense pressure to catch the monster who was terrorizing their city. Inside the headquarters, the atmosphere was thick with urgency. Detectives pored over maps and files, their faces etched with determination and fatigue. The investigation was complex, a tangled web of dead ends and false leads. Each clue seemed to lead them further into a labyrinth of confusion. The evidence board was a chaotic mosaic of photographs. notes and strings connecting the dots of a sinister puzzle. Brown was a ghost, moving silently through the city, leaving few clues in his wake. His ability to vanish into the night made him an elusive target. The detectives knew they were dealing with a cunning adversary, one who was always a step ahead. But he was not a phantom, he was flesh and blood, a human monster with a dark and twisted mind. His actions were calculated, his movements deliberate. The trail he left behind was faint, but it was there, waiting to be uncovered. He was a human monster, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. Each crime scene was a grim testament to his brutality. The detectives examined every bloodstain, every piece of evidence, hoping to find the key that would unlock the mystery of his identity. Detectives worked tirelessly, following every lead, however tenuous. They spent countless hours in the office, their eyes red from lack of sleep, their minds racing with possibilities. Every phone call, every tip was a potential breakthrough, a chance to bring Brown to justice. They interviewed witnesses, scoured crime scenes, and analyzed forensic evidence. The pressure was immense. Each piece of information was a piece of the puzzle, and they knew that one wrong move could mean another life lost. The city was holding its breath, waiting for news of the killer's capture. The media coverage was relentless, and the public's demand for answers grew louder with each passing day. The detectives felt the weight of the city's expectations on their shoulders. The investigation took them deep into the underbelly of London, into the dark corners where secrets whispered and evil thrived. They ventured into places where the light of day rarely reached, searching for any sign of Brown's presence. But they were determined, driven by the need for justice and the hope of restoring peace to their city. Their resolve was unshakable, their commitment unwavering. They knew that failure was not an option. The ghost of Jack the Ripper loomed large, a constant reminder of the case they couldn't afford to fail. The shadow of history's most infamous killer hung over them, a chilling reminder of the stakes. They were determined to write a different ending, one where justice prevailed and the city could finally breathe easy once more.